Welcome to your Monday. It's January 15th, 2024. Your Day with the Podcast brought to you by Hot Springs County Travel and Tourism. With all the cold and snowy weather, remember at Thermopolis, you can always find yourself in hot water. Well, the bitter cold is going to hold through Tuesday. It's going to start to retreat to the east, but it's going to be with us along with areas of snow. Snow again across the I-80 corridor of the west, parts of northern Colorado as well, and again into some of the central and northern Rockies, especially the central Rockies. We have seen a tremendous amount of snow, feet of snow, in some of the mountains of Wyoming, Utah, and Colorado over the last 5 or 6 days, something we'll talk about as the week wears on. The bitter Arctic air is going to retreat to the east Tuesday into Wednesday, so we're going to see sometime mid to late day tomorrow and into Wednesday, a pretty good warm-up in many areas. However, this is always a problem, and this is kind of a rule of thumb, like death and taxes, is that when you have this bitter cold air come in and it begins to leave, the dynamics of the difference in air pressure that begins to form from the bitter cold air that's very dense and causes a lot of high pressure, and the warmer air that's lower pressure coming over west of the divide as Pacific air comes in, you get a lot of wind that forms, especially in the mountain gaps. And this is always a problem after a big cold outbreak like this, especially where there is snow on the ground. Winds will be picking up, causing a lot of blowing snow. This will be really true along Interstate 80. I think we'll get through most of today without that being a problem. But as we get into Tuesday night, Wednesday, and Thursday, I'm afraid to say this is going to cause a lot of problems out in the open areas of the country with drifting and the Interstate 80 corridor and adjacent roads and highways, as well as the mountain passes. This always happens after a big cold outbreak and you get snow. There's going to be a period of wind after it. That's going to help us warm up some. However, we're going to see another push of very cold air out of central Canada push westward. So it's going to be a little bit of whiplash. Warming up Tuesday afternoon through Wednesday, getting colder east of the divide again Thursday into Friday. I mean, really cold again in some areas. Maybe a little bit of snow will be associated with that as well. And then I do think a more widespread warming trend will come back in over the weekend. But it's going to be kind of still kind of rough and tumble here for a little bit, as we're still going to have to deal with all these things that go on. Now, it was the sundog weekend. Boy, did a lot of folks get to see a lot of beautiful sundogs, especially with the initial wave of bitter cold air that came in Friday and Friday night, leaving behind sundog activity all across the region, but especially across southern Wyoming. Just the perfect setup for these sundogs to be found all across the region, with the bitter cold air, the ice crystals in the air, making for just basically a sundogapalooza across the Intermountain West. We also had, it's kind of a little bit hard to see here, but you see this? This is steam over Lake DeSmet in Johnson County, Wyoming, as we still had some open water in some of the lakes. And boy, that collision of the bitter cold air over the water causing some steam to form before we saw those lakes and open areas really freeze up with the bitter cold Canadian air that came on in. This is another sundog out of Laramie. Now there's a brave soul out for a morning run in the sub-zero temperatures. And then a lot of wind along the divide, a great shot here along the Wind River Mountains of blowing snow after the first initial surge of Canadian air came on in. Now, want to talk about the snow in the mountains, and we'll talk more about it later. The snowpack data is a bit behind, but we're going to see some of the snowpack drainages increase 30% from this storm, and what's more to come this week. But this has led to very high avalanche conditions. We have avalanche warnings. This is in Colorado here. We have very high avalanche conditions and concerns across portions of northern and north central Colorado. We have extreme avalanche danger in Utah, those black areas there. And then this is from the Bridger Teton Avalanche Center, 83 avalanches have occurred here recently. You see all those dots there? We mentioned over the weekend that when that long period of time, about more than a week, where it didn't snow in the mountains and it got warmer, the snow settled, there was a crust. Now we've got several feet of snow on top of that. We have a very unstable environment in the mountains. So Colorado, Utah, and Wyoming and other surrounding states, if you're headed to the backcountry, boy, you have got to be careful. The satellite imagery this morning continues to show these little pockets of Pacific energy and moisture coming in from the Pacific. Here's what's causing the overrunning snow right now over portions of southern Wyoming, northern Colorado, and into western Nebraska. The very cold air that's hard to see is still backed up against the divide and heading across to the south and east across the areas. And here is a satellite photo trying to show you air temperature, basically. So you can continue to see that it's along the divide and east of the divide in the blue areas here where the very, very cold air is, warmer west of the divide, but still pretty chilly. Now here, as of early this morning, anywhere you see gray, that's sub-zero in Fahrenheit. So sub-zero temperatures continue to push further south and to the east. Look at the large part of North America that is sub-zero. These blue areas here you see up in Canada and up here in Greenland, you're talking 20, 30, 40 degrees below zero. Just a huge area of bitter cold air. The 500 millibar chart shows the tail end of this bitter cold air is still back up, pushed up against the Rockies with this high pressure ridge along the west coast. Pacific moisture running along that boundary, producing today's snow. And there it is. This is what's going to fall between today and tomorrow. Most of this comes today. This is what we saw over the weekend, overrunning snow as Pacific air came over the Arctic boundary. And there's where the snow is going to be falling today. Not huge amounts, but we've had 3 events, some areas 4 events, and it's starting to pile up and add up. As we get into Wednesday, you can see that the flow of the air is more west to east, which brings more mild Pacific air coming on in. But these stronger winds are perpendicular, a 90-degree angle about, to the Continental Divide. Hence, this is going to bring the wind. Now, this is the wind gust forecast for today. Not bad. You can see that in this very cold air, it's really hard to get the wind going. So winds throughout the course of the day today will be enough to cause some blowing and drifting of the snow, but nothing really bad. However, this is what happens if we put this in motion over time. What I want you to notice here is basically along the Front Range of Colorado, then up along the Interstate 80 corridor into central Wyoming. This is where we're going to have the blowing snow, really a big problem. And then eventually coming out on into the plains as well. So for folks who have lived around these parts, you know what it's like. You get a 2 or 3 day period of high winds after a significant snowfall, and you're going to have a lot of blowing snow. South Pass, the whole I-80 corridor, the mountain passes of Colorado. It's just not going to be fun. The good news is the wind makes it warmer. However, the wind is going to cause problems with blowing snow. Now, these are the temperature anomalies by Wednesday. You see the orange pushing out here? The very cold air gets pushed off the divide. Warmer, more mild air from the Pacific comes in. This isn't really warm, but it's warmer. But as we get into the end of the week, on Friday, although high pressure is trying to nudge in, you see this back into this trough here. This is going to push the cold air back in. This is going to give us a little bit of weather whiplash. These are temperatures by Friday morning. Back to sub-zero temperatures along this gray line here, pushing right back into the west again. And along this boundary right here, moist Pacific jet stream winds will produce another shot of snow. There it is. A shot of overrunning snow across Nebraska, South Dakota, parts of western North Dakota, and Montana. You're going to get snow along that boundary. Then look at the mountains again. Getting another really good shot of snow in the northern mountains of California, the Pacific Northwest, and across the central and northern Rockies. So that will continue to add more snow to the snowpack before the week's over. And there you can see it right there. By the weekend, well, the big outbreak of bitter cold air begins to relax and diffuse a little bit. This is a more westerly flow, which should lead to more mild temperatures. But this westerly flow will bring wet weather to California and the Pacific Northwest, and some of that moisture will get into the Rockies for high elevation snowfall potential this weekend and into early next week. So this is a completely different pattern than what we had in December and up to New Year's Day. The tables have really turned, and it's just going to be a lot more busy, a lot more wintry, as we've all experienced here lately. Temperatures by Sunday. So you can see the temperature anomaly here warming up across the west, but look how cold it is across the central and eastern portions of the United States. So this is a prolonged wintry spell for the entire nation and the North American continent. Have yourself a good Monday. We'll see you tomorrow.